Welcome to Realms Unknown, a sci-fi and fantasy podcast brought to you by The Bugle. I don't know what to say, Lords Ravensbridge. The sweating clerk sat up, if anything, even more rigidly, straight in the camp chair behind his writing desk, despite the African heat wilting his hair, his cravat, and curling the papers before him. Your magic just won't work here. Stephen looked at him coldly, the title still sitting oddly on his shoulders, a raw reminder that his father was gone. Are you saying that Her Majesty would send me here to the edge of the Empire to clean up a magical problem with the magic that I spent decades, his voice cracked, he took a breath and unclenched his fist from the gloves he held, decades learning and honing and perfecting in the finest arcane schools in the land, and now I'm here, it won't bloody work. The clerk tried to tap his papers together into a neater stack, futile and floppy in the damp heat. Yes, sir, that's about the shape of it. Guns work? Yes. Gas lamps work? Yes. Stephen looked at him. Yes, sir. But magic. It's to do with the mythology, sir. The Sir Thomas Broadridge, sir. Sir Thomas says it's because the land has different spirits than back home. You can't draw from the source here, he says, unless you make a deal with the locals. A deal, said Stephen. Yes, sir, with the locals. The local spirits. Yes, sir, it's just what, Quimby? I don't know what to say, sir. It's just Realms Unknown. Yeah, that's right. You've just entered Realms Unknown, a weekly speculative fiction podcast brought to you by The Bugle, in which we discuss science fiction and fantasy tropes, the newest news, our favorite old shows, books, games, and more. I'm your host, published author and comedian Alice Fraser, and my companion on this journey, the Binti to my Okwu, the T'Challa to my Nakia, the Priya to my Roper, the Dion to my Chappie, the robot. It's Tom Neenan. Welcome.
Hello. I love that intro. That was dramatic. There was some proper acting going on there. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I don't often write dialogue, but when I do, I go in hard. Our subgenre deep dive for the day, which some of you might have deduced, will be works from the post-colonial African crossover into Western culture. Bit of diaspora, bit of Western writing about Africa, bit of African writing engaging in the West. But first, before we get into that, a little bit of news. And this might be right up your alleyway, Tom Neenan. Doctor Who showrunner Russell T Davies is set to be honoured with the award for Outstanding Contribution to Television by BAFTA in Wales. How do you feel about this? Do you think that he ought to be honoured or run out of town on a rail? It feels like all Doctor Who fans feel one way or the other about Russell T Davies.
Exactly. Yes, there's the hashtag Sack Russell T Davis movement, which I think is reactionary and silly. No, I think he's incredible, and actually, you can see it from 2 points of view. You can see it as his amazing achievements, but also, I mean, the fact that he's receiving a Welsh BAFTA when basically, and I know I'm exaggerating here, but sort of Russell T Davis and Bad Wolf, his company, are basically TV in Wales. You know, they set up this hub. They've made Cardiff a huge TV making sort of force, that it sort of makes perfect sense that BAFTA would go, yeah, you've absolutely rejuvenated kind of television production in Cardiff and sort of, you know, and in Wales as well, which is quite extraordinary and such a huge achievement. So yeah, so I mean, you sort of, yeah, Doctor Who fans, you have to sort of be reminded that whatever you think of individual episodes or seasons or arcs or finales or whatever, you know, what he has achieved both sort of year by year and also sort of over the last, say, 20 years, 25 years, is just so monumentally huge that why wouldn't you celebrate a man who is also monumentally huge? I am delighted to have met him, and he towered over me, and I'm not short. So yeah, good for RTD, I say.
I feel that if he and Michael Sheen got married, they would automatically become the new royalty of Wales. They'd have to fight probably the Prince of Wales to the death, but then they'd be the kings of Wales, I think. I mean, there's no argument here.
Michael Sheen has become he sort of revolutionized the way that people act, because I think he sort of called himself a non-for-profit actor, which is like he kind of earns money, doing various projects, and then sort of, gives it out to local communities and local projects and things, and sort of is very benevolent, and then is always like, yeah, I can earn more money. And it's sort of an extraordinary way to live, and kind of in a time when, there's all these different smaugs hoarding cash, it's sort of extraordinary to have someone who's so Dare I even say a word like socialist? Probably not. It's got too bad a connotations for some people, but certainly so generous and so benevolent in his sort of the way he does that kind of thing.
Also, he can always earn more money because he is one of those people who's actually very good at acting. I saw him he was Salieri in a production of Amadeus at the Sydney Opera House,
Mm.
and everyone in the cast was very
Oh
good,
wow.
and he was so
Mm.
much better than them that it was embarrassing for them. He
Yeah.
Genuinely, there was a scene in which, like, Mozart and his wife are having a knockdown, drag-out fight and it was one of those stagings where
Mhm.
everyone was on the stage at the same time and the action would move between different sections of the stage. So Salieri, is having a cup of tea
Mm.
at home. Meanwhile, Mozart's having this fight with his beloved, and they are screaming horrible things at each other, and they are throwing themselves, and they're fighting physically and tearing at each other's clothes and, like, weeping and, like, climbing over the piano and this absolute knockdown drag out fight. And meanwhile, everybody
Mm.
in the entire opera house was looking at Michael Sheen having a cup of tea. Like he just had he just had it on lock. It was
Extraordinary.
extraordinary. Extraordinary.
I hate to do this. I would counter that in playing Salieri as the more charismatic and skilled of the two, that's actually a bad performance. He's actually misunderstood the text there, which is obviously Salieri's meant to be the runner up. He's meant to be the one who's not as good. So sorry, Sheen. That's you have not done that one well. Big criticism from Neenan here.
I won't hear a word against him. I first encountered him playing a sexy werewolf, and I'll never he'll never top that performance for me.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And that brings me to our final piece of news in our news section, which is Fortnite has been has backed off an emote, which is the Fortnite version of an emoji or sort of a skin, after a big reveal in the Peacemaker show, in which it turns out the Peacemaker situation is happening in an alternate Nazi universe. And there is an emote or skin that you can put on the characters in Fortnite that makes them do little uh, what is being called colloquially swastika arms. So there's been a big a big emote scandal. I cannot even 5 years ago I wouldn't have thought that was a sentence that could have any meaning at all. But people are quite upset about it. That there are people who are trying to upset other people by buying these emojis. Essentially, all these skins for their Fortnite characters that do Nazi arms, or their arms form
Mm.
a do we just think everyone should stop everything or what?
I think maybe just more media literacy for everyone, please. More media literacy for people who don't understand that The Boys is about fascism, or more media literacy for people who think that Peacemaker is just going to be about a gung ho American hero and not read into anything James Gunn has done at any other point in his career, which is to, satirize or at least examine that kind of treatment of American law and patriotism. Like, it's the same people who like have Freddy Krueger as a Funko Pop. It's like he was a pedophile. Like the character canonically is a pedophile. Please, just a bit more media literacy. Everything doesn't need to be a Funko Pop, an emote, or any of those things. Like some things, I want things to stay scary. I don't want to see Longlegs as a plushie. So maybe some things should just stay where they are. Is my opinion.
Your ad section now, because you can't be what you can't buy. Are you haunted by your colonial past? Try Mama McKenna's superb supernatural salt. Whether it's the revenant ghost of a Victorian gentleman driven by the urge to something up for Queen and country, or a local poacher using a tame popobawa to cause chaos at the farmer's market, Mama McKenna's superb supernatural salt is the tool of choice for 9 out of 10 practitioners. Mama McKenna's, the dust you can trust. Are you completing a quest in the Kalahari Desert? Are you deeply connected to your ancestral traditions but also engaging in a complicated web of push and pull with modernity and Western cultural imperialism? Is it time for a ritual which symbolizes each of the 4 elements? You need a handful of dirt, a breath of the wind, a burning coal, and about half a glass of water. And this episode of the podcast is brought to you by the GoGo Cab app. Why risk a demonic possession when you can get a safe, reliable ride? GoGo compares prices for multi-taxi, spirit-guided buses and corporate mech lifts, now with a hex protection rating for every driver. Download GoGo. The city is chaotic. Your ride doesn't have to be. GoGo, safe from the other side. Now with food delivery options.
And this week's episode of Realms Unknown is brought to you by A Laughing Skull. Have you just hacked into a billionaire's organization or want to prove that you're malevolent in your internet deeds? Why not add a little flourish to your hack with a laughing skull? That's right, just a simple animation to show that you are evil and you have taken over control of a huge organization with a laughing skull. Nothing says, I'm a bad hacker and I've just really messed things up in Act 2 than a laughing skull.
And that brings me to, what have you been putting in your brain recently, Tom Neenan?
Well, I'm about to say what's been in my... Oh, hang on a second. Sorry, my chest feels a bit weird.
Oh, you're...
My chest feels... Something's about to burst... Ow! Something's bursting out of my chest. What?
Oh my
What's
God.
this? Who's come to join us in this particular section?
It's hideous. It looks like Chris Skinner.
Hey! Hello, Chris.
That is actually not the worst way I've said hello to people in the past. Just
So, Chris, we have both been putting the same things in our brains.
Quite exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And I came to mention this, and you said you had some thoughts. So, if it's okay, I'm going to throw it to you first. Do you want to say what we've both been putting in our brains and your hot take on it?
Well, it's the show that quite clearly would have been popular with anyone familiar with the Disney brand throughout most of Disney's history, and that is Alien Earth.
Classic Disney title, that one. Love it.
Honestly, you talk about wanting to get a nice plushie. I still want my Xenomorph plushie, please. Which weirdly now seems more likely after the Alien Earth series, given some of the controversy around it.
Controversy, you're saying?
Well, okay. Shall I get into it?
Get into it.
I mean, I want to hear this. Yes, please.
Get into it like an alien fungal spore gets into someone's ear hole.
Honestly, so this new series is icky. I think whether or not you like it or not, it's definitely icky, which is quite unusual for sort of big box set TV dramas. They do thrillers, they do space, sci-fi, fantasy, but actually icky, horror-y kind of stuff I don't think big TV has done a great job on. It's clearly taken the Alien franchise, stuck them on a spaceship that's finally crashed to Earth, and interestingly, there are different forms of post-human in it beyond the original movies.
Mm-hmm.
There are new aliens in it beyond the original movies.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been a source of controversy. Okay, cards on the table. I loved the series. I think it is highly engaging, like 90 mile an hour, super fast, crash bang wallop TV with the ick, with my favourite little alien of all time. So massive shout out straight away to the Image, who I'm absolutely in love with. It's controversial for a couple of reasons, including how these children, post-humans work in the environment, but also because of I'm not going to give anything away too radically here, but there is an assumption that maybe the Xenomorph, the scariest alien of all time, is reduced to almost a domesticated pet level in some way, shape, or form. And some people don't like that. And I posted about this on social media on the Mildly Informed TikTok channel. And I was told I was a normie because I liked this kind of stuff. And that true Alien fans would never accept this as a part of its narrative arc. What do you think?
Interesting. I wonder if, basically, I think the problem might be by sticking to the Xenomorph is the most terrifying thing that's ever existed and is just a force of nature, you sort of limit yourself narratively to basically the two good films. Not, I think all the films have merits, but like the two kind of, I'd say that commonly received as like the best ones, which is 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So you either one alien's killing everyone or loads of aliens killing everyone. And those are the only two stories you can tell with insane Xenomorph, running rampage, basically. So the fact that they're trying to sort of do anything else with it, I think is laudable, and I think they make it work. I still think that the xenomorph is terrifying, and I think that there's a very specific thing they've done with this particular creature to sort of justify that. I didn't think it lessened it, and as well, what it does as well is it goes, like you say, with the with our favorite, the little eye creature. It goes, here's crazy xenomorph that rips everyone up, and now here's sinister invasion of the body snatchers creature that is just so terrifying because it's thinking all the time, and you can see it thinking, and you can see what it's doing, and and we still sort of don't know what its deal is, like what it wants to do. Okay, so you've been called a normie. I'm sorry about
Yeah,
that.
it's okay. I can live with it. I've been called worse.
I mean, if you want to have your the xenomorph is just a crazy creature that kills everyone, you have those two films. I think this expands the lore quite excitingly, and presumably so do you.
Yeah, completely. And I just I genuinely come away from this series
Hmm.
invested in there being a second series. Like I wasn't disappointed at the end.
Mm-hmm.
It properly finished season one. Whether or not everyone was happy with that, that's up to them. But
Mm-hmm.
it's genuinely sowed some really important seeds for what will come next. It sort of ticks for me a lot of the important boxes of those sort of that near future sci-fi, which is the status of humankind as our own species, as people develop as cyborgs or as artificial intelligence develops. So it's got that arc going. It's got the whole corporate trillionaires, which one is going to be the most powerful and which one's going to dominate our species. That's another tick.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just got like icky creatures which could go rogue at any time. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
all for that. All for that.
Love it. Yeah, the corporate thing is really interesting because it is it five companies that sort of run
I think
everything.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've met maybe three of them. Like it
Yeah.
expands it just exciting enough where you're like, oh, I wonder what the other two are up to. Like these, yeah, it's very fun, and also has a really fun, obnoxious child genius as well, which is always a fun, lovable character to have in any show.
Yeah. One criticism of him though is that in the first few episodes you really do go, "Oh my god, this lad's a genius."
Mm.
And then as he makes more and more decisions and becomes more and more clear what his character's on the screen, you're like, "Really? Did he? How?" Because they haven't shown him doing like ketamine on screen, which might justify some trillionaire collapse. This is
Yeah.
just he's just not making good choices.
That is one of my tropes on a rope, or I don't know, where characters are meant to be geniuses, but they're being written by authors who are clearly not geniuses, but also to drive the plot forward, they need to do wildly stupid things. Uh, so like unless you establish
Completely.
like an honor
Completely.
code that forces them to behave in stupid ways, or like werewolf hormones that drive them crazy once a month, or whatever it is, like you have to establish something that makes it reasonable for these allegedly incredibly smart people to be doing just obviously stupid things.
Yes. And we've had that, like, in the real world, like you say, we're sort of introduced to this guy and he invented like an electric car and and then you're like, wow, this guy seems pretty cool and he wants to like save the planet. And then the narrative arc goes, oh no, he's not right. And actually, this has all gone wrong. So I guess it slightly follows that, the billionaire arc that we all enjoy.
Before I let you go, Chris Skinner, would you give us a Minds of which is, if you know, and if you're a listener, every week we have a look into the Minds of something we used to enjoy but maybe feel a little bit uncomfortable about liking as our older selves.
Well, I would argue, and this is probably a great example when we're talking about Alien Earth, which is putting any child in a child, it's up to you to save the world now. And don't worry about the PTSD you're going to get. Don't worry about the things that you're going to see. Just get on and think about the greater good. And imagine all those sci-fi and fantasy children who have sort of hit teens and are just basically sat there in their cave, just rocking, going, "This wasn't okay. This wasn't okay."
I mean, to be fair, I think the Hunger Games dealt with that fairly well as far as these things go. Like Katniss and
Yeah,
Peter are
okay.
pretty like messed up. All of the people who've gone through the Hunger Games are pretty
Yeah,
messed
yeah.
up, and you get to see them be messed up. But yeah, for the most part, where they're just like, "Hooray, we're fine."
Yeah.
We can all move on.
Annoyingly, actually not annoyingly because it's written by Jack Thorne, who's an incredibly talented writer. The Harry Potter play deals with that quite well.
Okay.
And take with that all of the various baggage you bring to that franchise, as you will. But yeah, it does deal with that quite well.
And that brings us to our subgenre deep dive. This week we are going into and out of the African diaspora. There's a lot of incredible writing coming out of Africa and a lot of incredible writing about Africa. Tom Neenan, have you got any recommendations for our listener?
I've got a recommendation, and everyone get your shots ready, because I am going to recommend a Doctor Who story from the most recent season of Doctor Who from the honoured RTD himself, and that is The Story and the Engine, which I find very intriguing. At the time, when I first watched this, I wasn't as keen on it because it's all set in a barbershop in Lagos, Nigeria, and it's about this the culture of storytelling. The Doctor turns up and realizes that sort of, I don't want to give too much away, but like the storytelling is the engine for sort of a malevolent creature. So it's from a playwright, Inua Elams, who wrote it, who's written lots of plays, I think, for the National Theatre set in and around barbershops as well, and sort of barbershop culture. And what Russell Davies said is, like, he was watching this play and just imagine if the Doctor sort of walked into this scenario, and that's basically what this story is. And I think it plays on some really fun sort of facts and sort of cultural tidbits about hair, about African hair, and about storytelling and its interplay with that. I wouldn't say it's my favorite episode of the season, but if we're talking about this, I think it's almost like a great, like a lot of good Doctor Who is. It's sort of like a great intro, like a good sort of Nigerian storytelling culture 101. It will sort of give you a sort of overview of kind of this culture in a very family friendly Doctor Who-y kind of way. And for that, I think it's really impressive. So that would be my sort of initial recommendation.
That is a great recommendation. Off the back of that, I'm going to recommend the Wormwood trilogy, which starts with the book Rosewater, and it's by Tade Thompson, which is set in Nigeria. So in 2012, an alien called Wormwood appears in London, and the geopolitical landscape of the world changes. In the 2050s, it creates an impenetrable dome in a place called Rosewater in Nigeria, which exudes a fungus called xenoforms, which interact with human nervous systems. And it becomes this kind of post-human emphasis on empathy, and it's a really beautiful kind of Afrofuturism with like a lot of science fiction. It kind of rewrites the history of science fiction, which is so kind of UK and US dominant. It's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend it. It is a trilogy called the Wormwood trilogy, but it starts with Rosewater. If you like Rosewater, you'll enjoy the rest of them. And my next recommendation is that if you like this subgenre, please go and have a look over on Blue Sky and over on my Patreon every week over at patreon.com/Alice Fraser. And at Realms Unknown on Blue Sky, we do a call out for the subgenre deep dive, and people give us incredible recommendations. So if this is up your alley, then you get just a massive reading list from bright and brilliant people. From the people this week, we get a recommendation. Jay and Sandy, both on Blue Sky, recommended Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James, which is what they call a malarial fever dream of a book. Very dense, deeply embedded in African folklore, very literary, and its sequel, Moon Witch Spider King, is told from the perspective of the first book's antagonist, which turns the whole narrative sideways, which I just think is a brilliant thing. But to go back to, I guess, the West, we need to talk about District 9. Did you ever watch District 9, Tom?
I did. I really enjoyed District 9. I'll let you say more about it. My experience of District 9 was that it sort of started and then did exactly what I wanted it to all the way through. I was like, oh, I'm delighted it's now going in this direction. I'm delighted it's now going in this direction. And it features the chilling line from the lead actor, whose name is escaping me at the minute, but he is an Afrikaans actor, isn't he? Or he speaks Afrikaans, and he says, congratulations, you've just committed your first abortion. and it's when they're sort of burning all of the eggs, the alien eggs, and it's so chilling and so awful. But he's amazing. If I could actually remember his name, but yeah, I love that film.
He also plays the bad guy in Elysium as opposite Matt Damon, and he's such a great baddie that I found it almost difficult to empathize with him in District 9, even though you're sort of meant to feel fraught about empathizing with him because he's such a bigot and he only learns empathy through kind of having to experience being the thing that he hates. But yeah, he's just a perfect evil Afrikaans baddie. I was really devastated in yes, his name's Sharlto Copley, and
Yes, of course.
he was such a good baddie in Elysium that there's a turn in that movie where I feel like the studio came in and like artificially cranked up the stakes and sidelined him for a bigger baddie, and I thought that that
Yes.
genuinely upset me. I was like, why would you not have as much of this baddie as possible? Just this sneering Afrikaner, South African guy with a shoulder mounted rocket launcher.
I would say as well, if you've grown up on the same media that I have, and not without cultural weight to it, you'll have mainly experienced the kind of white South African accent that I was sort of trying to do an impression of there as a villain. And we've both done podcasts. We've both done the same podcast with people like Pierre Novelli, who I think slightly go, okay, we're always the villain, are we? Whereas actually, District 9 is a really nice example of someone who starts off as sort of embodying the system, and then, like you say, you grow empathy for Sharlto Copley throughout the film, which is slightly refreshing because so often you hear that accent and it means that somebody is just going to be irreconcilably evil. And so it's nice to sort of expand that. But anyway, no one needs me promoting that, I guess.
I have a lot of things to say about specifically the South African accent in the eastern suburbs of Sydney and the way in which it's like it's got real sexual dimorphism in the expression of the accent. That it sort of in the same family, people have grown up in the same, are married to one another and grew up in the same town. The man is like, "Get out of my way, my friend," and the woman is like, "Oh my God, Jess is so much better now that you're tutoring her." Um, and it's like it's the same accent, but it's a completely different accent. Anyway, that's a sideline and irrelevant to our current thing, which is incredible science fiction and fantasy coming out of or going into Africa. Another recommendation over on the Patreon was Janelle Monae's Emotion Picture, which is it's called Dirty Computer and is available in its entirety on YouTube, and it's sort of an incredible piece of work. What else do you recommend, Tom, before we move on and leave people to the reading lists?
I think I mentioned this on the podcast before, but there's a compendium of short stories by Jordan Peele called Out There Screaming, which is just extraordinary. I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before. As you can imagine, with horror and kind of the African experience, there's a lot of sort of slave horror in there. And, the horror of slavery itself and kind of teasing that out to tell sort of horror stories. So if you don't fancy that kind of thing, then I'd probably avoid it. But other than that, I would say it's a really good short story collection.
That is an excellent recommendation. If you want more recommendations of this subgenre deep dive, please head over to the Blue Sky, see the Rex list there, or over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Alice Fraser. Always good people suggesting good things. That brings us to Trope on a Rope, which is where we look at a trope that we loved or hate or love to hate or certainly notice every time it comes up. Do you have a trope on a rope this week, Tom?
I do indeed. My trope on a rope is based on Alien Earth and slightly alluded to what Chris was talking about. This isn't my body. How the minds can be transferred into different kinds of bodies. It happens in both science fiction and fantasy. Someone might feel like they are, consciousnesses go into other bodies. In sci-fi, it's usually sort of either an android body or it's a newer body or something like that. I'm thinking about there was a film, I think it was called Surrogates with Bruce Willis, where everyone sort of lays around in beds and then their surrogates go up and do stuff. But then someone's surrogate commits a murder. It's quite silly and quite fun. But I really enjoy anything that, because I'm a bit I'm one of those really irritating people who's like, guys, it's not all about the physical, it's sometimes about the spiritual, whatever. I think the less we think about our physical bodies beyond keeping them sort of fit and healthy and suitable for the job, and more about kind of our minds, I think that is a positive thing. And what I find interesting is that certain fantasy writers, maybe fantasy writers who even write into their stories that people can jump into other bodies, maybe people might feel more comfortable in one body than another. Maybe certain fantasy writers do not bring that to bear in the current actual real world, where some people might feel more comfortable in a body that maybe they weren't born into. And I find it interesting that people can sort of write about that with authority in fiction, but when they're actually confronted with it in real life, they find it either distasteful or strange, and maybe they should examine themselves. I'm saying no more.
The ultimate Dungeons and Dragons avatar. You pitch it like that, see who comes on board. My trope on a rope for this week is spirits in the clouds, faces in the clouds, Mufasa in the clouds, cloud faces talking to you, getting a chat from the clouds. If a cloud started talking to me, saying it was the cloud version of my dead anything, I would have to have a bit of a lie down. I don't think it would work for me, but either way, it's a trope. It happens. I'd like to see it happen where someone's like, it looks like a rabbit. I don't know. Why is it clouds? Is it easier for ghosts to move water vapor? But it's sort of, it's the hologram. It's not, I'm not sure if it could just be, why not get a bird to talk to you? Why not get a leaf to talk to you? Why is it clouds? I don't know why it's clouds, but it is often/always clouds. So that's my trope on a rope for this week.
I do like the fact that the Star Wars franchise, which is sort of, although I guess Star Wars franchise has like spiritualities, but it has both sort of mechanical sci-fi and also sort of fantasy spirituality. It sort of combines the two. When they want to do a ghost, the person's just there. Like they'll just turn up. Like Han Solo wants to talk to Kylo Ren. They don't do a face in the clouds. They don't sort of do any kind of. It's just he stood next to him and he's talking to him, and that is I sort of like the shortcut of that. They're really not going for the spirituality. It's just like the actor turns up and says his lines, and that's fine.
Now, I want to bring back a segment that we let drop, which is the convince me to read this or watch this or play this section, the convince me section. If you would like to convince me or Tom's more suggestible than I am. He's already read a number of the recommendations from you. But if you would like us to read something, please send in a voice note to realmsunknown@thebuglepodcast.com, and we may well play it here on the podcast, and then we may or may not decide to engage with the thing that you have recommended to us. So convince us. 1 minute voice note.
Can I specify something?
You may specify something.
Whenever I'm in a secondhand bookshop and I'm browsing and I look in the sci-fi and fantasy section, there are always novels which are, I'd say, about 8 inches thick. They're huge and they're always about dragons. And I always just sort of imagine diving into one of those and they seem so forbidding. They seem so like I would just bounce off any kind of attempt I made to read one of those, that I'm kind of now intrigued and want, so I remember thinking that about Game of Thrones. I remember thinking the sort of those books just seem so forgiving, and actually as soon as I got into them, I hacked through the first one, which is about 800 pages in about like a week and a half. I absolutely loved it. So if there's any of those kind of books, any of those sort of slightly pulpy, you'd find them in a secondhand bookshop. And there's an image of an impossibly muscular man fighting a dragon on the front. If there's any of those that are actually good or actually sort of got you into reading those, I'd be really interested, because, like I say, I see those all the time and I'm like, I cannot even fathom opening that, reading it and enjoying it. But I would love to be proved wrong. So if you could do that, I'd be very happy.
Massive muscular doorstop dragon book recommendations into Realms Unknown at thebuglepodcast.com, please, for Tom. A reminder for our listener to subscribe to the Bugle channel, and all the books that we cover here will be in our affiliate store. There's a link in the show notes. You don't have to pay any more if you buy through that link, but we get a little bit of a kickback. That brings us to the end of this episode of Realms Unknown. And as your quest for the rest of the week, why not follow the recommendation of both Tom and the Ica creature that could go rogue at any time, Chris Skinner, and watch Alien Earth? Whether you're a normie or a ketamine-fueled evil genius making bad choices, then there are a lot of ticked boxes in there for you. Give it a try. In terms of our post-colonial African sci-fi and fantasy deep dive, why not try Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James, as recommended by our Realms Unknown listeners, Jay and Sandy. They described it as a malarial fever dream of a book and very literary. So if that sounds up your alley, go check it out. Or check out my tip of Rosewater, the first in a trilogy of sci-fi books by Nigerian-British writer Tade Thompson, set in a town on the edges of a mysterious alien biodome. And that is the end of Realms Unknown for this week. Tom Neenan, have you got anything to recommend or suggest or promote?
Nothing to promote other than to say please go to my Instagram. I'm going to hopefully be doing some more painting soon. I've had to take a bit of a break just space-wise, but I am back, and also I'm taking more commissions. A fun thing to do sort of as we approach Christmas. If you sort of stuck for, for a present for someone, then I have very reasonable rates if you'd like. I mean, I'll be honest, like everyone, like every artist who ever existed, painting a lot of dogs at the minute. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't hate it. So, if you have a child, a creature, a family member, a favourite character from Peacemaker, then I will paint them for you at very reasonable rates, and I really enjoy doing that. And it's and so far the people I've done the commissions for, they all seem very happy with what I've produced. So maybe that might be something to consider for Christmas, because I like painting and it's a fun pastime.
Excellent. You can also buy me for Christmas. You can buy a Patreon membership, patreon.com/Alice Fraser. Get 2 weekly writers' meetings, plus additional fun and shenanigans and behind the scenes and updates and posts and lots of stuff over at the patreon.com. I will also be at the Brisbane Writers' Festival on the 10th of October. If you are in Brisbane, I'll be doing 2 shows there, 1 panel and 1 show where we write a silly story. So head over to the Brisbane Writers' Festival and look up my name. I'll see you on the 10th of October over there. This is a Bugle podcast and Alice Fraser production. Your editor is Ped Hunter. Your executive producer is Chris Skinner. I'll talk to you again next week. Ooh.